All right, real quick video on this motorcycle lift framework I did. So basically I'm wanting to have a way to lift up a motorcycle or something small like that down there in the shop area. And up here, it's just these 2x6, not trusses, but rafters, I guess, that don't even have any bracing to the top like that. So it's a 16-foot span on a 2x6, I believe. Maybe it's a 2x8, I'm not sure. But anyway, I think it's a 2x6. Not enough you could just hang it off one. I wouldn't feel comfortable hanging a Harley or something off that. Even half the bike is 300 pounds, 400 pounds. And you catch in the right spot, it may be closer to 500 pounds dead center on one rafter. Just wasn't happy with that setup. So I did a couple things. I ran a 2x4 up to here to try to connect that. That way you've got strength of this plus the strength of that trying to pull down. So it's kind of turns it into a truss, And I did that on both sides. And then I ran a 2x6 this direction, and then put an eye bolt right through about the center of it, down through there. It sticks out the bottom like that. Stiffen it up with a couple just pieces of scrap wood right here to give it some strength this way. And I think it's gonna be plenty strong. It's probably actually overbuilt at this point, which is what you want. You don't want to have something borderline holding up a motorcycle while you're working on it, especially on a lift. And normally when I've got it on a lift, I've got it hung from the ceiling at the same time. That way there's no way it can fall off. And you just don't want it falling off on one of the kids or something. It could just be a real bad day. So over-engineered it a little bit, but I think it's gonna work out good. All right, big moment. Putting the last panel in. Got all this done. I think I showed that in the last update. Been working on this shop area. 8 panels on this one, and went fairly smooth overall. Again, it's just like any of these processes. After you get some experience with it, you get better and faster and less mistakes as you go. But I knew a little bit of a challenge was going to be on this side. When I got down to the end down here, same as I had on the other side, except like I'm talking about the insulation situation. On the other side, I had like 14-inch strip at the end where I could just barely squeeze up in there, set that last amount of insulation on the last panel before it, and then that last one just lifts up a little 16-inch or 14-inch wide strip with insulation sitting on it. On this one, I had almost a full sheet to do that same thing with, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna maybe try to crawl back in there and drag a bunch of insulation with me and try to do it like that, but I realized it's gonna be so hard to get back into that corner. And you can't like walk on the ceiling, so you're straddling off a rafter. And so anyway, I decided to just try the same trick basically. The only thing I did differently here is I've hung a little bit over the edge like that. That way it kind of sits and seals up that last seam a little bit. But ultimately, this section right here is going to be the least insulated. It's not sealed up as good as the rest of the garage, but it just is what it is. It's not a big deal. I might add $1 to my heating bill every winter compared to if I could get back in there and insulate it perfectly and really seal up all the cracks. But anyway, I'm about to put it up in there and hopefully it fits good and be done with all that. So immediately switching over to caulking all around the top, all around the doors, get all that caulked, and then give about a half an hour, let that kind of dry. Probably do one more coat of it because sometimes it kind of sucks it in as it dries. And then let that dry for another half hour or so, and then start priming. Went to the paint store yesterday and got some paint. I think I'm gonna try doing primer first. I was originally just gonna keep putting tons of coats of paint on it. They talked me into doing a primer coat first. They said it'd take up less. But the thing is with that, the only downside I'm thinking is that they're both white, so it's gonna be kind of hard to track where you've been with the primer versus the paint. And the paint's semi-gloss, the primer's not, so it's one of those deals where while you're painting it, you probably can't tell. Then you get done later and you're gonna see spots missing the gloss to it. I'm just thinking that's the situation that I may run into, but maybe it won't be a big deal. And worst case, I'll take back that primer and just get some more white paint if I'm finding it's too difficult. But we'll give that a try and see how it goes. All right, I got the shop painted. Worked out pretty good, I think. I mentioned there that I was a little concerned about priming it first and then painting it, but it ended up pretty much being a non-issue. I didn't have too much trouble seeing where I had been with the primer and with the paint. That primer, it doesn't cover 100%, of course, or you can kind of see through it. So there's that. It's just not as shiny. So that was pretty much a non-issue. But I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Basically, did one coat of the primer, one coat of the paint, which was what I was hoping to do. Because if you got to do a second coat of paint, it's pretty much 50% more work and more money. I'm going to have it's looking like around $900 in paint. So you do one more coat and you're talking about probably a good $300 or $400 more in paint. So it's important to get it to covering too. Plus, like for instance, what I'm finding is this area, it took me about 4 or 5 hours to prime it, 4 or 5 hours to paint it. So, if you do one more coat, it's another 4 or 5 hours for this. And I think this is about a fifth, 20% of the total surface area of the entire garage. So, if you do that times 5, so there's another 25 hours of painting, let's just say, to do one more coat. So I was happy that it covered with 2. It might look a hair better with another coat. And I get down to the end, I have a little extra paint. I might take some, just run across the walls real quick. The ceiling's kind of the bigger challenge, working above your head, and the walls won't be too bad to throw a little extra paint on it. Trimming takes a long time too. It takes almost as long to trim around the corners and the doors and everything as it does to paint with the roller, everything else. So anyway, I was happy that it did it with 2 coats instead of 3. And so anyway, the next step is putting kind of everything back together in here. The door, which worked out okay. And then the lights, I'm starting to play around with those a little bit. Debated on how many to use in here. But one was 9. I think it's about the right amount to light this up real nice in here where I'm gonna have my workbench right here. Get plenty of light there. And of course, have my 2 other bars will hang down from the ceiling right above the bench with a separate switch there to really get you some good light on the workbench. And mess around with the hang height. First I hung like 3 links. I raised it up with just 1 link. I'm thinking about getting rid of any links and just having it from hook to hook essentially. That way it keeps it real nice and tight to the ceiling. I just think it looks better overall from what I'm finding. But again, I'm kind of testing it out in here because when I go to do the main garage, I really don't have to do it twice. It's gonna be a lot more work. Go around and move them or rehang them or whatever. So trying to get the spacing and the height and all that right on this so I can quickly knock this out. But finish up a few things in here. Got this, the panels done above and below the breaker box. Got some of the receptacles in, painted around those. Next step is to finish caulking all around the top seam, filling any more imperfections in the wall with some caulk, and then let that dry. And probably Sunday, I'll start getting some primer on it. I think I'm gonna do here is prime everything from the I-beam back, ceiling and wall, and then paint all that. Get this 100% done in here. Get the lights up, everything. Get the lights working, and then move all this junk here back this side of the I-beam, and then work on the front. So basically, kind of like I did with the shop, kind of breaking the garage into thirds. Because to try to do it all, this stuff's just in the way. There's only so many places you can put it. You want to stack it outside and stuff. And so it's going to work out good, I think, kind of getting this side done. So, the next update, I'll probably have this whole back area done, and this one's still just looking rough here. But, you get a pretty good sample of what it's going to look like just from seeing the shop area. It's kind of easy to visualize now, just how everything's going to look. But I think I'm going to be real happy with how everything shakes out at the end, based on what I'm seeing here. So do another update here, hopefully in another week or two, have all that painted or all this area painted. But I'm thinking hopefully by the time I go to the beach at the end of June, I'll have this whole area painted and pretty much done. The biggest thing left at that point on the inside will be painting the block, which is going to take a little bit of time, but not too bad. Probably a couple days of paint and masking and primer and all that stuff. But get that done. Of course, I got all the gravel work to do, finish up all the drain work on the outside, tie the deck back in. What else? I got to do my water line setup, my sink and hot water tank and all that. Bring the air compressor in, run the air lines for that. Still all kinds of small stuff to be done. But I think by end of June, I'll have the majority of all this in here done, ready to bring the tractor in here and start pulling gravel through and taking it out back and stuff. So that's kind of my goal at the moment, but just got to keep picking away at it.